Hello, sociology students. This is Mr. Reese, and this is going to be the introductory video of sociology. So it's going to be for the sociological foundations units. So let's get started. Okay, so the definition of sociology is the scientific study of social structure. All that basically means is that we study society and the patterns of behavior that go along with it. To go a little bit further with that, to go with those patterns is we observe it through social behavior. All right, so this isn't like psychology where we just look at one individual. We're looking at the whole entire group. And we start seeing patterns and identify different trends throughout those patterns that we see or throughout those groups. Moving a little bit further, I underline social structure, and all social structure is that it is the patterned interaction of people in social relationships. So again, going through those trends and those themes that we see throughout the whole entire society. So moving on a little bit further, the big thing is that we see behavior away from the individual and more towards the group. So we're not looking at just what one person does in their own home. We're looking at what they do in a whole group or in the family or even in, a big band concert that obviously is not happening because of this whole entire COVID ordeal. Okay, moving a little bit further. So the big thing that we do is that we use something called the sociological imagination to think throughout all of society. And what the sociological imagination is, it's the ability to see the link between yourself and society. So I'll explain that a little bit further in the sense that, you see something one way, but in society, we may see it another way. All right. So what I'm going to ask you guys to do, and this is on your Google Doc that goes along with this lecture, is that I want you to describe the object that has the most meaning to you personally. So you can either pick the shoe or you can pick the bike. So take a moment and do that right now. All right, so hopefully you have done that. So you guys may say something like, oh, the shoe is, what I use to work out in and that we can run in. If you're a cross-country runner, you can say, oh, I have a favorite pair of shoes that I ran my first mini marathon in. For me personally, when I see that bike, I don't really see, just a bike. That I see what I did basically every single day this summer, and that is to go on bike rides throughout Portage and Chesterton and Hobart, and how I got to see some of my friends by biking. And, we spent a lot of hours with each other. So that's one way to kind of see the link between yourself and society. And hopefully that helps you understand that whole idea of sociological imagination. All right. So moving further, important things to remember when you are a sociologist and whenever you are looking at society. You want to look for patterns, all right? This isn't a one isolated event or deal. We're looking for multiple patterns. So a pattern right now is, the anti-maskers, the people that don't want to wear masks. We see that throughout all of the United States. And now we can see a theme, we can see a pattern, and then we can start investigating why they actually are anti-maskers. All right, moving on a little bit more. It is more like conformity or conforming to something. So we do see, the people who do wear masks, we have that conforming behavior that we are expected to have. Now, there are anti-conforming people, such as the anti-maskers, but overall, we're looking at the conforming things that match the group expectations. All right, so there are some examples that we can use in school. How many of you guys have ever sat there and get mad at, some students that walk on the right side of the hallway when they're going the opposite direction of you? It's very frustrating, right? So that is an idea of, the pattern is, or the conforming is they walk on the right side of the hallway. And if someone doesn't do that, they are breaking that social norm. All right. So the big thing also is that you're looking at the group and not the individual. I already said this, but the thing is you are looking at your group or the group as in society and trying to find these patterns, these themes. All right. The one big thing that I want you guys to remember is that you got to think with or thinking in the margins. And what that means is that you kind of step out of society and look at society looking in. All right. So this is kind of like if an alien decided that they were going to invade the Earth. They're going to look and study our behavior socially without any prior knowledge to what we already know or what they already know about our society. So they will look and be like, okay, this is what this group does. Why do they do it? And then so on and so forth. All right. So that's kind of the big thing to remember in talking about the sociological imagination. A great example of this is actually Mean Girls. You can click on this video. It's about 30 seconds long, but Katie Heron, Lindsay Lohan's character, is actually someone from Africa. And, when she comes over to girl world or, high school, she doesn't know how to handle it. She has to be re-socialized in that sense of the fashion. All right. So that's kind of Katie Heron looking at society in the margins, stepping away and looking at society and the patterns that are going on within our society. All right, so moving on a little bit more, everything that we do has to deal with sociological perspectives. And all sociological perspectives are a viewpoint that looks at the behavior of the groups, not the individuals, and they usually have a theme to them. All right, so the best way that I could ever describe it, it's like putting on lenses. So when you put on a lens, you see society different with that lens. If you put on another perspective or another lens, you're going to see society in another way. So there's actually going to be 5 different major perspectives, and that is the symbolic interactionist, the functionalist, the conflict, the gender conflict, and the race conflict. And guys, the big thing with these 5 is that we're going to spend some time on them later this week. All right. So get to know those, get to love them, because we're going to be spending a little bit of time with that. All right. Moving on to another thing. I know it's a lot of terms to start off with, but it is very important that you guys understand these terms and that you guys can actually get them. So the next thing that we're going to be talking about is social dynamics and social statics. So social dynamics are aspects that have changed throughout history. So different things about society that, we don't do anymore. The end-all be-all example that a lot of sociologists actually use is language. All right, so we don't talk like we did in the 13th century or the 14th century. We talk very different from that sense. All right, so that's social dynamics. Social statics are the exact opposite, which are aspects of society that have just stayed the same. So an example of this could be that we all have to have an education, right? We've seen this throughout society and throughout the time that we actually started schools. Everyone needs an education. All right, so that's an example of that. So moving on a little bit more, I want you to take a moment and actually compare what has changed and what has stayed the same through this video. So hopefully you can click on this video and you can actually go through this. This is 100 years of boys' clothes. So it goes through the different fashions of the 1920s all the way to 2020. So that's that. So take a moment and in the Google Doc, write the things that are the social dynamics or the things that have changed and the things that have stayed the same in the social statics. So pause the video now and do that. All right, so hopefully you're done with that. Now moving on to dramaturgy. Now the key word in dramaturgy is drama. All right. Now, when it comes to this whole idea of drama, it's a ideology that tells the story of society through like a theatrical play. All right. So the example I always use is 13 Reasons Why. Yes, it is an extremely, extremely sad story, but it does tell the different issues that are going on in teens' lives today. All right, that being, dealing with sexuality or dealing with suicide or different things of that sort. And it does play through it like a drama, like it is on 13 Reasons Why. So that's just another lens that you can put on, and another lens that we will be putting on later this year, especially when hopefully we're back in school and we're watching Mean Girls. All right, so moving on a little bit more, we have functions of society, which are manifest and latent functions. So manifest functions are the intended use of something in society. All right, so it was created for this reason and is used in society for this reason. Now, just because something is intended to be used, obviously it can be used for other things, all right, things that it was not intended for. And that is where we get latent functions, or the unintended cause of something or some action in society. All right, so an example that you can use is, the idea of email. So the intended use of it is that we send emails quick and we can get messages back and forth. The unintended cause of that email, or the invention of email, is the fact that the postal service doesn't need as many workers because people aren't actually writing as many handwritten letters than in past. So that's kind of a latent function there. The other one is, that's the handwritten letters. The other one that we can use is Uber. So what I want you guys to do is that I want you guys to spend a little bit of time writing what the manifest function of Uber actually is. And then after that, I want you to try and think of some latent functions that kind of go along with Uber. All right, so pause the video and do that now. All right, so hopefully you're done with that. So obviously a manifest function is the fact that, you can ride share and you can get on your way to somewhere and you don't have to wait for a taxi or even call a taxi. You can just call an Uber. A latent function can actually be this. All right. And if you watch the video, and I hope you guys do because it's a really, really good video, is that people are calling Ubers now for ambulances. Now, why would they do that? Ambulances cost a lot of money. All right. An Uber costs a fraction of what an actual Uber actually cost. All right. Or a fraction of what an ambulance actually cost. So that's where we get a latent function of society. All right. So moving on past that, we have one last thing, and that is what we call sociobiology. And again, it is socio and biology. So we're going to go into more of the scientific side of things, is the idea that societal norms and values are just biologically driven. All right. We do these things because it is in our genetic makeup. All right. So the example I use is actually from a video game, which is Assassin's Creed. If you played that, all it is that you get in this machine and it reads your DNA and you can relive the past memories of your ancestors. And the thing is that that's taken from sociobiology, is that whatever we know, things that we do come from our genetics. All right. And that's an example of what we see in Assassin's Creed. So a more practical example could be this TED Talk, and it talks about homosexuality is not just about sex, but about survival. So take a moment and watch that. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but hopefully you get something out of that. Other than that, guys, I do have a quizzes for you. Make sure that you do that quizzes. And then there's also a nice little quiz that you will have to take on top of that. It's going to be worth a very minimal amount of points. So I don't want you to stress too much about it. So other than that, have a great day.